Okay, so welcome. I am super excited to have this conversation with you, Christina. We are hosting you in Sarnia for the Universal Hermetic Ray Kabbalah Introduction Day experience. I'm super excited about that. And I had some questions to explore today. So, my Kabbalah experience with you has been so profound over the years. And to be able to share this with the Sarnia community, the Toronto community, and really anyone else who wants to join us, it's a beautiful thing because Kabbalah has been so life-changing.
That's awesome. I'm excited to be able to come out to Sarnia. I've come out years ago, and you have an amazing community out there, some really beautiful initiates who've studied Kabbalah with us too in the past. So happy to come out again and meet some new people.
Maybe we'll start with what we're actually doing in Sarnia, the two time slots and what that entails.
Hmm. So we're gonna start off. It's a half a day. We understand, it's a Saturday in July. We're not trying to take up anybody's whole day, but if you have a bit of time, there's two parts. There's two parts. There's part one, healing with the tree of life. It's going to be a guided meditation to experience the energy of the tree of life, experience the energy of Kabbalah, and how it can help bring balance and clarity to your mind, to your heart, to your soul. And then that's going to be for about an hour and a half in the morning from 10 to 11:30. And then at noon, we'll dig in a little bit deeper into the knowledge, a bit more about how do we study the Kabbalah? How do we, immerse ourselves into the teachings, the rituals, the symbolism, the metaphors, the teachings, the stories, the knowledge. That's what we're really going to dig into in the second half.
That's amazing. I have a question. If
Yes.
somebody is, they've never experienced anything with Kabbalah, how would you explain like what is Kabbalah?
Okay. Excellent question. So Kabbalah is an ancient study of life and who we are as divine beings. There's a lot of people out there is like, oh, Kabbalah is a Jewish thing. And there is definitely some keys that are held in the Jewish mysticism. There's no doubt about that. However, this goes beyond any religion. This is a teaching that was given to humans, to humanity by God, and it has been held sacred and kept secret in the various mystical and Hermetic traditions. And our tradition of studying the Kabbalah is the Hermetic tradition, is this system that, like our mystery school path is a Hermetic path of initiation. Kabbalah is held within the Western esoteric teachings as well. So it's not associated with any one religion. It's available to anyone who seeks, that higher light and knowledge and wants to get to know themselves as a divine being and maybe just wants to explore something different. Kabbalah very much works with, philosophy and teachings as well as, ritual and that sort of more what one would call religious or ceremonial practice. It's a combination of both. Um, if you're familiar with the symbol of the tree of life with the two pillars, um, there's three pillars. The two on either side represent sort of the opposite. And, Kabbalah helps us to find the balance between the philosophical, between the ceremonial, and, bring it together and, walking a path of balance where we can learn from all aspects of life. So it's open to anyone.
It's fascinating you mentioned the Jewish tradition because the first time I studied the tree in our tradition, it was in New York City. And there was a woman in the class who was Jewish, grew up studying Kabbalah.
Hmm.
And what I loved was how much she got out of the experience. It's like she had this huge background, but then she was learning so much and really expressed how powerful the keys were in the Hermetic tradition. And I had a client who studied Kabbalah through the Kabbalah Center. And so a lot of background. And he had the same experience, like the difference with the Hermetic tradition, with the tradition as through the modern mystery school, the keys, the ascension process, and how powerful the energetic process is versus just the knowledge of understanding. And I was on the complete other end of the spectrum. I read no books. I knew nothing about it. I knew the image of the tree of life, but I literally knew nothing. And then I would show up to the classes and to the study groups. I shouldn't admit this, but I didn't read anything. I just would show up.
Mm.
And then
You
all
didn't do
of the
your
teachers,
homework?
I didn't do any homework the
Oh.
first time I did the tree. And I would show up, and the qualities of that area of the tree and the teachings of that area of the tree were literally around in my life, like potent. It was like like I couldn't argue that it was so part of my life, and that was coming from a place of ignorance. Like I didn't know any. I wasn't predisposed and like making things up in my imagination, like to connect everything was just happening.
Mm.
So maybe you can express a little bit more about how do people actually study the tree within the school and like what is the process of that?
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. So, in the mystery school tradition, we are a path of initiation. In the modern mystery school, if you want to study, you know, learn the deeper mysteries, you step on the path of initiation. The first step is called Empower Thyself. Maybe some people listening to this will have done that class or they're contemplating it. And then I can speak to it because myself personally, I'll share my first experience of Kabbalah was I had not heard of Kabbalah, what Kabbalah was until I was in Mind Power Thyself, which was 20 years ago. So that was 20 years ago, and I was in my Empower Thyself class, and the teacher started talking about the Kabbalah because there's just a small section, half hour, 45 minutes that we teach about the overall subject of Kabbalah. And I had really never heard of it before. It was super foreign. It was all new information. And I just remember hearing about it and like kind of like my soul leaping and being like, I don't know. I didn't know what this was, and I didn't know how to study it because in the class, you don't really, in the Empower Thyself class, we talk about it, but we're not really engaging with how to study it yet. Um, and so what I started doing is I just dove into um, reading about, reading just from the Empower Thyself manual. I started reading and reflecting and meditating on the tree of life and journaling. And that's how I started to like weave my experience with the tree. And that's exactly what I encourage everybody to do when they come to my Empower Thyself class. And when, even in these intros and look on this video, I'm encouraging you to do that too, to connect with the tree is just to start to engage with it and, you know, meditate on it, allow the tree to be in your space and your consciousness. And, you know, Kabbalah is a study. Kabbalah is a broad subject that can get studied in many different ways. You mentioned the Kabbalah Center. There's many different traditions that will study the Kabbalah. How we study the Kabbalah in the modern mystery school is that it is a class that is available to initiates. So you would have had to have completed the Empower Thyself class to study it, because you want to have that foundation of certain pieces of knowledge, energetic understandings. Um, and you can study the Kabbalah, at minimum, you're an initiate. But some people, it might be the second class they do in the mystery school. Some people, they might be in the mystery school for 10 years before they choose to study the Kabbalah. So you don't there's no like prerequisite in that regard. You could have as much or as little experience in the mystery school as you want. It's whether or not the Kabbalah calls to you. Because the Kabbalah, in the way we study it in the modern mystery school, is it is a year-long intensive study where we come together 15 times, 11 times on Zoom for our study sessions for the 11 Sephiroth, and then 4 times together in person for classroom teachings in person. So we spend a full year together exploring the tree of life. We are delving into the teachings, the contemplations, the knowledge, and then we take that knowledge and we reflect on how it applies to our life inwardly, right? And how it's going to apply to us and how we can use it and how we can create with it, how we can manifest, how we can serve with it. And it's really through the application of the knowledge that we gain the wisdom. And so the beauty of the course of the year is that you have the opportunity to apply it, use it, and come back and say, okay, this is how it's working. Now what's next? What's next? So there's this evolution, there's this what we call ascension. Um, the energetic process that's happening is it is an ascension process. And when we come together for those 4 times a year, the 4 classes in person, it's not only an in-classroom teaching with lectures and exercises, there's also, it accumulates in a ceremonial process that does shift our vibration upward, higher and higher on the tree.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful experience. And I find too, even through in Empower Thyself teaching Kabbalah, how even though it's a small section, something lights up in the class and people feel drawn to Kabbalah and they'll feel like, oh, that's something I want to do. And I often will say, this is something you have to put on your bucket list for sure. Whatever your relationship is, like you said, some people do it right away, some people do it 10 years into the study or of their own personal journey. But the actual experience is so profound. And I'll never forget one of my clients said what they did in 1 year of Kabbalah was like 10 years of therapy.
Mm.
The amount of personal growth, personal understanding, personal healing that can happen is really profound. And what I love about the experience is you're with the same group of people
Mhm.
and you're going through your own experience of growth, but then you're also witnessing 20, 30, 40 other people going through their personal growth. And it's almost, um, I don't know, and maybe it's just me, but it's almost more fulfilling to watch that. Like you see people where they were at the beginning and they were struggling with something and something shifts, something happens. I remember this one woman, she was, I think in her 60s, and she just went in with a complete open heart, open mind. I just want to fully experience this to my as a way of self-care
Mhm.
growth, but no full intentions. And at this time, I was in the New York tree. So in New York, you have all these artists and musicians and business people, all these big ideas for their manifestations, and they're like, I want this, because there's that manifestation part of dedicating the tree to, and you can speak to that as well. But I loved her experience because in the simplicity of it, all these huge things were happening for her. It was like she had the things that were happening for her were so profound. Like she had won a huge sum of money. She had started a relationship and fell in love. She had moved. She physically started to look differently. And it was just really beautiful to witness. So you go through your own growth and your own manifestation process, but then you're also experiencing everyone else at the same time. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about your experience because you've been teaching this for so long. What are some themes that you see for people in terms of the benefits and growth that they experience? And what's this manifestation piece that comes with Kabbalah?
Hmm. Oh, there's a lot I can say to all of that. So, let me touch on the transformation part, the healing part of it, because your client, I've heard this before. People say it's like ten years of therapy in 10 months or a year or whatever, and while it's not therapy, it isn't. I'm not a therapist. That's not how this works. You think about what psychology is and what is psychology, the root word psyche? Where does that come from? That means soul, right? Soul or spirit. So it's like, what is the true roots and the true intention of psychology, right? I'm not going to get into all that, but I will say that, like, we know that the intention on some level is to heal the soul, right? And um, you know, there's a lot of great things that you can accomplish with therapy and modern medicine and modern therapeutic practices. Absolutely. I have a lot of respect for all of that. But something Sovereign Ipsissimus Dave says, one of our lineage holders in the modern mystery schools, he says that you can't solve you can't solve a spiritual problem with mental solutions. And so if the thing that needs addressing is the spirit, there's no amount of talk therapy or medicine or anything that's going to solve that. And you may need the talk therapy, you may need the medicine for other things in your life, 100%. But when it comes to addressing your soul, when addressing your spiritual self, addressing your relationship with God, you can only do that through spiritual means and spiritual practices. And whether you follow religion, whether you follow philosophy, whether you follow a system, every spiritual system, religion, philosophy says the same thing. You need a way, you need steps, you need a process, stages to follow. And the Kabbalah holds an amazing container for that. The study of the tree of life is literally a ladder. We get into that. We talk a little bit about that. The tree of life is Jacob's ladder, the stepping stones, the stairway to heaven, so to speak, right? So a lot of times the transformation and healing that people experience is because they have never been able to address their soul and spirit on that level before. And, you know, what I've seen over the years, I feel very blessed. This year is 10 years that I've been teaching Kabbalah. So I'll be starting our full year journey in September, and that'll be 10 years from the first time I started teaching. So I've been a student of Kabbalah for 20 years and a teacher for 10. So what I've seen in students that has been the most inspiring and the most beautiful is just how these shifts have come into their lives. I'll never forget one of my first students tell me at the end of the year, just tell me, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not angry all the time. I'm not yelling at my husband. I'm not frustrated with my kid. My life, my home life is better. You know, something that like we take for granted. We take for granted. If we're on a spiritual path, we're always like, oh, I gotta meditate and study the next thing and read the next book. And it's like, yeah, like absolutely, those are all great things. But how is your life? Like, how is your daily life? How are your relationships? How is your home life? And for those out there that, you know, that they know, the struggle, the relationships, workplace, having kids, like there's a lot that can feel overwhelming and frustrating. And people, out there, they're tired, they're stressed, they're drained. And no amount of sleep, no amount of coffee is going to fix that. No amount of audiobooks is going to fix that. You got to go into the soul. You got to go into the self and address those things. And so when people study the Kabbalah and they get to the other side and they've just shifted and healed the things that they couldn't kind of figure out with the other stuff. Still doing the other stuff, still doing the things they need to do, the good exercise and the, taking care of the family, taking care of life. Of course, like you need all those things. But if you're searching to take care of your soul, uh, this is one of the most beautiful ways to do so.
So true. And I can even speak for my own personal experience of um, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you've made normal. So many people are functioning with stress, or they have certain patterns, like you referenced, anger, or for some people it might be depression. For some people, it might just be like just an emptiness, like you're going through life, you're doing the things, you
Yep.
work, you might have kids, you might have, goals that you're doing. It's just like the surface way of living, and you don't realize that there is more fulfillment to be accessed. And
Mm.
you might see people online and think all these other people have better lives and all these sorts of things, but like, you got to be careful with that too, because again, people always post the best picture, right? And
Yeah.
there's this depth to life that exists that I always find, if I'm being honest, sort of sad that people don't get to experience that. Not that they don't have access to it, but that they maybe don't know, or they don't necessarily have the, like you said, a path or tools or a way to access it. And with Kabbalah, for myself, there was layers of healing that was so subconscious that I didn't even realize was a thing to heal. Often, I'm a registered psychotherapist, so I of course see there's a place with therapy, Um, but even with therapy, there's a ceiling, and you can only talk about something so much. It's like you keep reliving the thing the more you talk about it. But like, how do you get to a root of something? And in our culture today, people reference trauma all the time, and they link these aspects that identify who they are, whether it's they identify to ADHD or they identify to anxiety or they identify, this is just who I am. This is just the way that it is, versus understanding that, yes, that might be what you're experiencing. However,
Mhm.
you can better understand it and heal it in a way that goes beyond the cognitive understanding of it,
Absolutely.
goes beyond the mindfulness based activity, goes beyond the medication, goes beyond the plant medicine that people keep reaching out to because they know there's something more, but they just don't know how to access it. And with my own healing, there was pieces, specifically my second time doing Kabbalah, I was accessing pieces that were, there was this almost like this way I was being in relationships that I would ask my mom, like, was I abused or something when I was a kid? Like, it just like I didn't have memories of it, and I was just trying to like just didn't understand. Like, I was like, there's got to be something. And I went through a process in my second Kabbalah where these deep, deep, deep layers were being healed in this pattern that I was always trying to figure out. Um, just went through this transformation process.
Mhm.
And I wish I could express in words so that people could cognitively understand what I'm talking about. But sometimes when it comes to these deeper spiritual healings, there are no words.
Mhm.
It's truly something that you won't understand
Yeah.
unless you experience it. And when you talk about Kabbalah and I hear you and I hear the words and I get it, I'm like, yeah, exactly, exactly. But when somebody is at point A and you're on the other side trying to it's like if somebody was locked in a closet and you're trying to explain what color is.
Mhm.
It's this beautiful expression in the world and there's different shades and like you're trying to express it, and if somebody understands color and they've seen it, they're like, yeah, of course. Like, but when you've never seen it or experienced it, it's just like, um what? you know like what is this thing? And I wish that people would consider these different ways to explore, because life can get so mundane and so boring, and what you make normal, like stress or anxiety or depression or anger, like you just think that's who you are, and it's not,
Mhm.
you know
Yeah, absolutely. And you just described why, why we do what we do as, as guides, as teachers, and why I do what I do as a Kabbalah teacher is so that we can just share like this drop of light, this drop of a potential for some other way of experiencing life. And and so, if any of this is resonating, this is, when we're talking to people, like we're just talking, like you and I are just talking right now. And if this is resonating, if you look at the tree of life and it resonates with you, if you look at the symbols, if you look at the words on the page and something just calls to you, that's a clue that this might be something that works for you. This might be a thing. And um and that's why too I invite people to come meet with me or do a call with me or come to these intro evenings or workshops because feel the energy, come get a sense. Maybe it's Kabbalah, maybe it's the life activation, maybe it's empower thyself, maybe it's Reiki, maybe whatever, maybe it's column A, column B, D, all of the above, whatever, or maybe it's not, maybe it's something entirely different. Um, but by exposing yourself and just kind of trying it and saying like, okay, what does this hold for me? What could this potentially reflect into my life? Um, because it can. Um, and the Kabbalah itself, Kabbalah absolutely, even the teachings of Kabbalah tell us that there is not one way. There's not one way. There's many ways. There's many pathways. There's many pathways up the mountain. You know, there's a stairway to heaven, but are you gonna run it? You're gonna walk it? You're gonna walk it on your knees? You're gonna do backflips up the stairway to heaven. There's lots of different ways. And the Kabbalah teaches us that. The Kabbalah shows us that. But I think the biggest key is to take the first step. If you want to get to the top of the mountain, no matter what, you gotta take the first step. And a step at a time is how we get to the top.
I love that. I really do. And when it comes to living your life, we're exposed to so much now, right? Online, there's so many different things, almost too much. It's hard to make a decision. Like, what do I want? But if you recognize that where you are and where you want to be, you have a gap. I truly believe that Kabbalah is an amazing experience to get clarity on where you are, where you want to be, and how to get there. That manifestation piece to Kabbalah of like, okay, this is what I want in my life
Yep.
and what needs to shift within me so that I can align to that and create that. And so much information in the world right now. There's books and videos and podcasts that talk about mindset and they talk about manifestation and the power of the brain, the power of the mind, and all these different things. And then you have this ancient teachings and practices of Kabbalah. Like, where does it fit in all of these other pieces that people are now learning about or exposing themselves to? Like, what's missing there that maybe Kabbalah can bring for people who are really excited about manifestation and creating a life that they want to be, and they feel that there's that gap?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I love about Kabbalah and the mystery school path as a whole is that it is a complete system. It has everything you need within it to manifest. So the manifestation process, absolutely. Mindset is a part of it, taking action, like all that stuff is absolutely like there's great mindset coaches out there, business coach, like all of that is 1,000% great, good. You need all that stuff. But you also need a bit more. You also need to clear out the things that block you from manifesting. You also need to be aligned with your highest purpose. You also need to be aligned with inspiration and which comes from light that so that you when you want to create in the physical, you're creating something that's based on your highest good. Because we all know this. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, whether you've had successful businesses in life or you've just created things in your life, your family, your friends, your events, all these kinds of things, planning a wedding or something, right? It's all steps and things are coming into manifestation. And we all have experienced when things haven't gone right, when it hasn't quite been right, things have been off. Why? What's been off? What's getting in the way? And sometimes we come up against the same things getting in the way, right? Um, and we've all had that experience where we've gotten ourselves out of the way and we've surrendered, right? And we've had that experience where we surrender. Okay, universe, you're winning. Do it your way. And it ends up being better than we can imagine, right? And that's a tiny piece because what Kabbalah helps us to do is not just surrender, but create space so that we can co-create with the universe. We're actually working in alignment. So that stairway up to heaven, that ladder of the tree of life, yes, it is the roadmap back to God. The reason why it's the roadmap back to God is because it's also the blueprint for creation. It teaches us how God created, how God took light and brought it down into density and into form, and all the different steps and stages of how that happens. And so we are following that pattern back up. And by doing that, by ascending that pattern, ascending the tree of life, we're actually clearing, creating balance, creating space so that we can flow the light down into manifestation. So that's why the manifestation piece is a part of Kabbalah, because as you're healing and transforming the things that are holding you back in life, it's creating space for you to actually create the things you do want in life.
I love that. I really love that. And it's true that it's everything in one place. I remember before finding the school and learn and doing Empower Thyself, I was such a dabbler, like I like dove deep into psychology. Obviously, I studied it. I ran the marathon of the Tony Robbins circuit. I did yoga and Reiki and all like traveled around the world learning from different teachers and different traditions, plant medicines in South America. Like I was hungry, and when I found the school and the path, it was like a breath of fresh air to recognize like, oh, everything is in one place and it is in such a pure form. It is presented in such a way that is in steps. It's digestible. You go at your own pace, you learn at your own pace. And when you need the next thing, it's there waiting for you.
Yep.
And Kabbalah is a perfect example of that. And I just find that um, it complements everything else. And you've mentioned the word God quite frequently in this conversation. And I know sometimes when people have already, maybe they were raised or have come to a belief system, like I know I came from a Catholic, um, and I can speak to this personally. I never felt it was conflicting, but that's just one version. Do you find that, like, how does Kabbalah fit if somebody's coming in with an already pre-existing spiritual path or spiritual exploration?
Um, again, because it's not a religious practice, what we do, it is a hermetic practice. It's a mystery school practice. You can still participate in religion if that's what you want to do, or if you've had your, good, bad, ugly experiences, with religion. Um, just know that it's not that. So it doesn't conflict, and it also isn't the same. Um, the the best thing I could say is to experience it. The best thing I could say is just to come give yourself an opportunity to feel the energy, hear a little bit more. If any of this resonated with you, I, welcome you to come to any of the intro workshops. Talk to me, talk to Laura about the path, talk to any of us. We are very much about wanting people to find the divinity within themselves and cultivate uh, a lovely relationship, a beautiful relationship with God, creator, source, however you want to name it, because that's a great key to joy in life.
Joy in life. So to experience it, if they wanted to join us in Sarnia, it's on Saturday, July 12th. The morning program is from 10 a.m. to 11:30 and the afternoon from 12 till 2. If you want to do both of them, you're welcome to do that. You do receive a discount if you do. And if you're in the Toronto area, there is also an introduction on Monday, July 14th. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing another introduction. I'm doing working with balancing emotions on the tree of life, talking about how we work with, clearing our emotions, balancing them so that instead of our emotions being like cinder blocks around our ankles, we take them for the information that they give us, and instead of holding us back, can propel us forward and into our manifestation and, you know, peace and achieving goals and all the good things of life.
Beautiful. And then Kabbalah begins in Toronto in September, which is super exciting because it's been a few years now since we've had a Kabbalah tree in Sarnia or not Sarnia, in Toronto to actually study for the next year. Do you want to share the date for that?
So it's that first weekend in September, and uh, yeah, it's the first time in a few years that we're starting a tree in the Toronto area. So for my Canadian friends in the local area, please, you're very welcome to join us. It'll be, it's always like an intimate group, 20, 30 people, and we just spend the year together. We dig in. Um, it's great.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your time today, Christina. And anyone who's listening, if you have any questions or something sparks, just reach out to either one of us and we'll be happy to answer your questions and introduce you to some ways to study this incredible path and Universal Hermetic Kabbalah tradition.
Thank you, Laura.